Hey guys, so with fry season upon us, I thought I'd do a video up one of my favorite fry patterns. I call it the Joe Dirt. I definitely didn't invent this type of pattern, but this is the one that I like to use. So first, this is like a 3 or 4 step process. I like a straight eye hook. This happens to be a number 10. You can tie them smaller, you can tie them bigger. They're good for smolt as well, depending on the type of eyes that you use. So anyways, let's get started. So the thread I like to use for the body is UTC fluorescent shell pink, and I just like that it kind of iridesces under UV light, even underneath the wrap. So I'm just gonna lay a base of thread down. And I stop more or less at the bend. I don't want to tie it onto the bend. I want to keep this on the straight portion of the hook. So for the body, I use medium opal mirage from UTC. And keep in mind when I do these, I usually do like 1 or 2 or 3 dozen at a time. I'll do each step. So it makes it a lot quicker to do these one at a time from start to finish is a bit of a pain in the ass. So I'm going to tie the tinsel in on the side, and I'm going to wrap it up all the way to about an eye length behind the eye. So once I get here, you can trim your excess. And I like to throw a whip finish in. I'm going to use the rotary to make this a lot quicker. So I like to get just overlapping turns. So once you're about an eye length from the behind the eye, just tie it off. Okay, and then we're just going to whip finish. So what makes this fly kind of a pain in the ass and a good one to do in steps is I like to use 2 coats of Sally Hansen's on the body. So I just go over top of everything. Nice thin coat. And if there's any big drips or sags, I like to smooth them out and actually pull it off and get rid of any excess stuff. It's going to be 2 thin coats. I don't want to build up a body, I just want to make the tinsel a lot more durable. Okay, so there we have the body. So again, 2 coats. So this I would put aside, keep cracking on, do a bunch, and then come back, do a second coat. Luckily I have a bunch that are ready to go. So there it is. It's not very iridescent on camera, but in natural light this flashes and sparkles pretty good. So to do the actual tying portion, I like to use any olive thread. You could change up the color too. You could do blue, tan, brown, imitate whatever baitfish. It doesn't have to specifically be a salmon fry. So I'm just going to start this at the head, and I don't wrap back further than I want the head to be, and I like to kind of set the head size right off the hop, so I don't have to come back and adjust. So it's just over a hook eye. So you could use any kind of feather, hair. I've done these in bucktail. I've done them in marabou. My go-to is usually some form of fox hair. I like how it moves. So here I have Arctic fox tail. I also have a chunk of, I think it's marble fox. So the latest batch I've been doing in marble fox. So I'll keep going with that today. So I take a pretty good chunk. I don't know how to, even saying a 1/4 inch of hair doesn't really do you any good, because how thick is it, etc., etc. But about that much, maybe like a pencil. And you see how wide and thick that is. I don't want that much bulk. Salmon fry are not a big fish. So I'm going to grab the ends and I'm going to pull all this underfur out until it gets to the desired thickness. So like most of the underfur is going to come up. So even that's a little bit on the thick side. So there we go. And another good tip is wet it. Arctic fox is pretty fluffy, but once it's wet, you get a better idea of what it's actually going to look like on the fly. So I like to go maybe 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch behind. But again, this is going to depend on the size of the fry. They're not all going to be the same. But for lengthwise, I like to about that realm. So I'm going to pinch it. Couple loose wraps. Snug it down, and then just make sure it's sitting centered on top. Okay, and then I'll collect the rest of the fiber and cut it on a 45. And this really helps give a neat head at the front of the fly. So once I have that cut, I'll come just kind of clean everything up. Okay, so far so good. Next flash. So I usually will only put 1 piece of flash, sometimes 2, but even then, if the flash is too overbearing, I'll actually cut it off. So I'm gonna use Mirage Flashabou. I'm just gonna put 1 piece down each side, and I'm gonna try to keep it pretty well in the center, in between the fur and the underbody. So I'm just going to wrap it up, fold it over, and then wrap it down the far side. Okay, and then that's it for the tying portion. So now I'm going to just shape the head. Make sure everything's how I like it, and then whip finish. Okay, now I will do a coat of super glue. And typically I would let that dry and again move on to the next fly, but during this video I will just skip to the next step. So with the super glue on there, I'll put the stick-on eyes. So these are just 1.5 mil. You've seen these in the fly shop. You can use 2 mil as well. I like the little silver eyes. They look pretty realistic compared to the naturals. So with the super glue on there, stick the eye. One on each side. And again, this is a step in its own right, so I would have a dozen or so sitting there ready for eyes. Go through, stick the eyes on, and then stick them back on the foamy as I continue throwing all the eyes on. And that also gives a chance for the super glue to dry for the next step, which is going to be the UV resin. So while we're giving this super glue a second to dry, I'm just going to make sure that the Flashabou is sitting on the side. The way I tied it in, it's really easy for it to get kicked up or down, so make sure everything's where you want it just prior to resin, obviously, because you can't change it after the fact. Okay, so now with resin, I've been using Gulf resins. This is just the classic, which is what I use for most of the clear. And then I have the Gulf Ambulance in red that I'm going to use for a little hotspot on this guy. I've also used orange in the past. It's a little less flashy, a little more natural looking, but if you want a hotspot, by all means put it in. Otherwise, just use clear to set the eyes. So first thing I'm going to do, you can see there's a space between the eyes here. I'm going to put a little bit in there just so I make sure that there's good contact on the back side of those eyes. So tiny little blob, and then spread it into the eyes with the bodkin. And try to get good thread coverage as well. Okay, so far almost no buildup. This is just purely to get a good glue adhesion to the eyes. So hit it with the light. Okay, now I'm going to do the hot spot. So the same spot in between the eyes on the bottom of the fly where the throat would be. Going to dab a little bit of Gulf Ambulance in red. So this stuff's much thicker. You gotta be a little patient with it. But you'll see when I hit it with the light, it really fluoresces a lot. So I bring this to about halfway back up between the eyes, just where I like to stop it. If you wanted to do the whole underside, I don't see what difference that would really make. This is just what I've been doing. So a little bit too much. I don't like too much of a bump, so I'm just going to take some out. Wipe it on a paper towel. Smooth that out again. Get an air bubble. Yeah, I'm just going to give that a second to settle down. I'm going to hit it with the light. You can see, maybe you can't see, but how much that glows and shines. It's pretty incredible. So because this is not as clear, I do give it a little bit of extra time on the light. I found if you just kind of hit it, it can stay soft. So really give it a little bit longer than you normally would. Okay, so now I go back to the clear to finish off the head. So I like to fill in the gap that I've left right in the front. As well as get a little bit on the stick-on eyes on the outside. Sometimes this takes even a second coat after this, just depending on how everything settles down. I don't like to put too much on at once. I don't think it adheres as well. So I'm just spreading this to the back of the head, over the side of the eyes. Go just barely onto the hair. So get it spun around a little bit, let everything even out. Hit it with the light again. And I'm going to do one more coat. That's a little better. So again, keep it moving, get everything to settle. Hit it with the light. There we go. That's it. Finished Joe Dirt Fly. Again, this is a number 8. I did it with Marble Fox. One last thing. Flashabou, I don't like to go too much past the end of the fly. And that's it. So again, you could tie these in marabou, bucktail. The top of the bucktail, the normally unused side, is normally what I use because it's darker. Here's one I did earlier. Just grizzled marabou. The body's different as well. Just flat braid. But that's the basic idea. You can play with it, make it your own.